Vandaag bij Antwoorden met Bayless Conley.
We need to talk more about Jesus. It's His story, it's His life, it's His love, it's His sacrifice, it's His grace that the world needs to hear about. We need to get back to the Lamb. We need to fall in love with Jesus once again. Many of us have left our first love, and we've got to get back to the Lamb.
Welkom bij Antwoorden met Bayless Conley. Het leven kan soms een uitdaging zijn. Maar of het nu gaat om financiën, relaties, gezondheid of de vraag naar je doel in je leven, één ding is zeker. God ziet je. Hij houdt van je. En wat er ook aan de hand is, Hij heeft de antwoorden op je vragen.
I want to talk to you about Josiah, who was king in Judah. And we're going to read, to begin with, God's testimony, God's own testimony about Josiah. 2 Kings 23 and verse 25 says, "Now before him there was no king like him, who turned to the Lord with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses, nor after him did any arise like him." Now you think about what God says about Josiah. It says there was no king before him that turned to God with all of his heart, all of his soul, all of his might. No king after him. That means King David included everyone else. There was no one like him that went after God so completely and so fully like Josiah did. But here's a little background on Josiah. His grandfather Manasseh was king while Josiah was still a little boy. And Manasseh was evil. The scripture tells us that he filled the land of Israel with idols and pagan shrines. He worshiped false gods. He practiced witchcraft and sorcery. He talked to demons. He burned children alive, including some of his own sons, as sacrifices to evil spirits. Scripture says he seduced and corrupted Israel to sin, and they ended up doing more evil than the heathen nations around them, or than the nations that they had dispossessed from the land of Canaan prior to them. The scripture tells us that he murdered so many innocent people that Jerusalem was filled with their blood from one end to the other. And it went on for 50 years. And then his son Ammon takes the throne and begins to reign. Ammon was Josiah's father, and he carried on with the legacy of idolatry and murder. And if possible, he went beyond the sins of Manasseh. The Bible says of Ammon that he sinned more and more. Finally, his own servants murdered him, and the people made Josiah their new king. And we pick up the story, 2 Chronicles 34, verse 1. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the ways of his father David. He did not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. 8 years old. How many think that's pretty amazing? And we can learn some lessons from Josiah's life, and here's the first lesson. Our environment doesn't have to determine our character or our destiny. "8 years old, and basically all he has ever known is evil, violence, murder, idolatry, and the occult. Yes, he was socially and economically privileged, born into a royal family, but morally and spiritually, the cards were stacked against him. We should not be reading that Josiah walked in the ways of his father David, and that he turned to the Lord with all of his heart, all of his soul, and all of his might. It just shouldn't have happened, and yet it did. And I know some of you here, you're from a background of substance abuse and violence. You were raised in it. Others, you were raised with a background of extreme cynicism and a hatred of all authority. And that's all you ever heard growing up, bitter words and a rejection of authority and a despising of the powers that be. Others were raised in an environment of extreme immorality, others in the occult. But listen, your upbringing or your lack thereof does not have to be a prophetic voice concerning your future. All right, secondly, here's a lesson we can learn. If we walk in the light we have, more light will come. Josiah walked in the little bit of light he had, and God honored it and gave him more. We continue on with the story in verse 3 of 2 Chronicles 34. For in the 8th year of his reign, when he's 16, while he was still young, he began to seek the God of his father David. And in the 12th year, when he's 20, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the wooden images, the carved images, and the molded images. And now he wants to go in and repair the house of the Lord. And I want you to see this verse. We're going to refer back to it. But verse 8, in the 18th year of his reign, he's now 26, when he had purged the land and the temple, he sent Shaphan the son of Azaliah, Maaseiah the governor of the city, and Joah the son of Joahaz the recorder to repair the house of the Lord his God. Now when it says he purged the land and the temple, it was actually only a partial purging. Because we read on, if we follow the story, you'll find out there was still a huge wooden idol set up in the temple. There was still all sorts of articles used in the worship of Baal in the temple of the Lord. There was an entire priesthood of Baal, of pagan priests that aided people in the worship of idols. There were still prostitutes, temple prostitutes, working in the house of the Lord. Josiah didn't understand that all this was wrong. For 18 years, he walked with a very limited knowledge of God, but he walked in all the light that he had. And friend, more light is about to come to him, because the truth is God is always attracted to hungry hearts. You know, there's so many people that I've met throughout the years here at Cottonwood that remind me of Josiah. They love the Lord, they have a relationship with God, but very limited knowledge of the Word. And they come into Cottonwood and they're like a dry sponge that just drinks everything up. And they say, Pastor, I can't believe it. You know, the Word we get here, it's transformed my life. It's transformed my marriage. My kids are changed. It's affected our whole household. Jesus said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free. It also makes you dangerous. Dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. Because when you've been liberated by the truth, God will then send you to reach and rescue others with the truth. You know, the scripture says it's not good that a soul be without knowledge. So we have Josiah for 18 years has been serving and following God's ways to the extent that he knew. And then we read, he sends those guys, Shaphan among them, the scribe, into the temple to do repairs. And Shaphan goes into the temple, and the priest Hilkiah says, Shaphan, I found this old book tucked away in the temple. And he gives it to him. And we read it, 2 Chronicles 34:15. Then Hilkiah answered and said to Shaphan, the scribe, I found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan. Then Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. Josiah has never read, has never seen a copy of the writings of Moses. This is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. He's never seen it. It's the story of creation. It's the story of Noah and the flood. It's the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph in the land of Egypt, and Moses, and the Exodus, and the plagues, and the Passover, and the splitting of the Red Sea, and the 10 Commandments. Oh my, he's never heard it before. He's never seen it, the miracles that God did in the wilderness, the history of Israel. Josiah has never heard it. No one in his generation. This book has been lost for 50 years. Josiah is walking in all the light that he has, which is not very much, and then all of a sudden there's this flash from heaven, and all of the writings of Moses suddenly come to light. What an amazing moment. So Josiah hears the words of the law read for the first time, and he gets a group of guys, and he sends them to this woman named Huldah. She's a prophetess. He just wants to make sure that what he's hearing is right, and he sends them to ask her, look, they found this book, this old book in the temple, and I think we're in trouble. Am I reading this right? Are we in trouble? He realizes for the first time how far the nation has actually strayed from God. And Huldah, the prophetess, confirms his deepest fears and says, yeah, Josiah, judgment is coming. The nation's in trouble. But because of the posture of your heart towards the book, because when you heard the words of the book read, you ripped your clothes and you wept and you humbled yourself before your God, judgment will not come in your lifetime. Judgment is going to be held off because of the posture of your heart toward the words of God's book. And then Josiah does something that we all need to do. This is lesson number 3. We must become people of the book. Josiah became a man of the book. Listen to what happens next. There's quite a few verses, but it's well worth our reading. 2 Chronicles 34 and 29. Then the king sent and gathered all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. The king went up to the house of the Lord with all the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests and the Levites and all the people, great and small. And he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which had been found in the house of the Lord. Then the king stood in his place and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and all his soul, to perform the words of the covenant that were written in this book. Then he made all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin take a stand. So the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of God, the God of their fathers. Thus Josiah removed all the abominations from all the country that belonged to the children of Israel, and made all who were present in Israel diligently serve the Lord their God. All his days they did not depart from following the Lord God of their fathers. Josiah takes God's book as his final authority and as his rule of conduct, and in so doing, he impacts the entire nation. Josiah was the glue that held them close to God. For his entire life, they didn't stray from God. Some of you, you have no idea the influence that you actually wield with your spouse, with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers. Because of your love for the book and your commitment to Christ, God is using you to hold others close to him. Somebody says, well, that's the Holy Spirit's job. Yeah, I agree, but the Holy Spirit uses people. The Holy Spirit uses people. You know, when you love and obey God's word, you will be an influencer of other people. And I'm not talking about being hyper-religious. We don't want that. But when you're just a normal person that loves God's word and endeavors to obey it, you become a mighty force. Be a man of the book. Be a woman of the book. And when you choose to be a person of the book, it leads to a destiny fulfilled, which is our 4th point, fulfill destiny. Josiah got busy about obeying the word, and in so doing, he unconsciously fulfilled his destiny. In the 2 Kings account, immediately after making his public declaration that he was going to live by God's book, he goes into the temple, pulls out the remaining idols, and burns them. You know, he just read the 10 Commandments for the first time. God says, make no graven or molded image of anything in heaven or on earth or below the earth. Do not bow down to it. Do not worship. Josiah realized this is all wrong. And he takes it out and he crushes them and he burns them. And he disbands all of the priests of Baal. He gets rid of them all. He destroys all of the idol shrines that Solomon and the other kings of Israel had made. And then he proceeds to go throughout the land, destroying and removing every last vestige of idolatry among the nation. He goes and he breaks down the pagan altars. He crushes the idols and he burns them with fire, and he's doing that. And we read something quite interesting. 2 Kings 23, verse 15. Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel and the high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, had made, both the altar and the high place he broke down, burned the high place and crushed it to powder, and burned the wooden image. As Josiah turned, he saw the tombs that were there on the mountain. And he sent and took the bones out of the tombs and burned them on the altar and defiled it according to the word of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. Then he said, what gravestone is this that I see? So the men of the city told him, it's the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things which you have done against the altar of Bethel. He's burning these pagan priests' bones on the altar, defiling them, destroying the idols. He sees the tombstone. This is buried there. People said, a man that prophesied that you would do the very things you're doing. What? Burning people's bones on this pagan altar. And if Josiah would have gone over to that gravestone and looked at the inscription, it would have told him that the man that prophesied that he would do that lived and died 300 years before Josiah was ever born. 300 years. We can actually read the story. We can go back in time 300 years. 1 Kings chapter 13. Here's where it unfolded. Verse 1. And behold, the man of God went from Judah to Bethel by the word of the Lord, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. Then he cried out against the altar by the word of the Lord and said, O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, behold, a child, Josiah by name, shall be born to the house of David. And on you he shall sacrifice the priests of the high places who burn incense on you, and men's bones shall be burned on you. Talk about destiny. Josiah wasn't trying to fulfill this 300-year-old prophecy. He didn't even know about it. He was just busy trying to live out his commitment to obey the word of God, which caused him to bump head on into God's plan for his life. And he ended up doing exactly what he'd been created to do. Listen to me. There are very specific pathways and endeavors that God has planned for you to do. You have a destiny, a specific destiny, as much as Josiah had a specific destiny to fulfill. Listen to this verse, Ephesians 2:10. It's the Passion Translation. We have become his poetry, a recreated people that will fulfill the destiny he has given each of us. For we are joined to Jesus, the Anointed One. Even before we were born, God planned in advance our destiny and the good works we would do to fulfill it. God has a destiny for you. He has a pathway for you to walk. And listen, if you will become a man of the book, if you will become a woman of the book, just like Josiah, you will end up where you're supposed to be, doing what you were called to do when you're called to do it. It comes out of just being a person of the book. God has plans for you, my friend, and your job is to get into the book, make it your final authority, and live by it. Humble yourself under its commands, trust its wisdom, live by its precepts, and you will fulfill your destiny. We come to the fifth and the final lesson that Josiah teaches us, and it's this: we must get back to the Lamb. This is the next thing that happens in the sequence. 2 Kings 23, verse 21, then the king commanded all the people, saying, keep the Passover to the Lord your God, as it is written in this book of the covenant. Such a Passover surely had never been held since the days of the judges who judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Passover was held before the Lord in Jerusalem. He'd read about it in the book. It was in Exodus. Israel had been in bondage in Egypt for 400 years. God worked miracles, and then God told Moses, this is the final stroke that is going to bring liberty to you. Your chains will fall off, and you're going to walk in freedom. Every household needs to take a lamb, and you need to kill the lamb and put the blood over the door of your house. And when the angel of death comes through the land of Egypt, the firstborn of every household will die, except those homes where there's blood over the door, and death will pass over those homes. That's where the word Passover comes from. And Moses said, now, this needs to be a perpetual celebration for you. Every year you need to do the Passover. Come back to the Lamb. Come back to the Lamb. Come back to the Lamb. The Lamb was slain. That's how you're free. Come back to the Lamb. That's how you end up in the promised land. Come back to the Lamb. That's what God did to set you free from bondage. Come back to the Lamb. Come back to the Lamb. But no Passover had been celebrated in over 5 decades. And Josiah said, we have to come back to the Lamb. And my friend, it all just points to Jesus Christ. When His blood is over the door of your heart, spiritual death has to pass right over because you're a recipient of eternal life. 1 Corinthians 5:7, for even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us, and we need to get back to the Lamb. We need to talk more about Jesus. It's His story. It's His life. It's His love. It's His sacrifice. It's His grace that the world needs to hear about. We need to get back to the Lamb. We need to fall in love with Jesus once again. Many of us have left our first love, and we've got to get back to the Lamb. You know, I like to say Jesus in the beginning, Jesus in the middle, and Jesus in the end. Yes, we do need to get back to the Lamb because Jesus is the center of it all. My friend, He wants you to know Him. And listen, He's not just some concept. He's not just some guru that had some good teachings. He is, was, and forever shall be the living Son of God. And it's not a coincidence that you're watching me right now. Maybe you've never put your trust in Jesus. He's reaching out to you at this very moment. Maybe you are a believer and you're going through difficult circumstances. You need to know that Jesus cares and He wants to help you. The Bible says God is a very present help in our time of need. Take a moment, maybe just stop whatever you're doing right now and let's just pray together. Can we do that? Heavenly Father, we come to you right now, my friend and I, and we ask you to do something great in their behalf. Lord, I pray that you would touch them in a way that they would understand it. I pray that you'd give them illumination concerning the next steps that they need to take in their life. If they're going through difficulties, Lord, I pray that your peace would come upon them. I pray that you would strengthen them in the inner person by the power of the Holy Spirit. And God, I just pray in general that you would help them. Let your mighty hand be made known in their life. In Jesus' name, Amen. If you have been a partner with us and helped us by supporting these broadcasts, listen, there is a whole lot of fruit that's abounding to your account. And I take that phrase from the book of Philippians. Paul spoke about that to a group of believers that supported him in his missionary endeavors. And when he talked about the fruit that went to their account, he's talking about all the lives that were changed, all the people that were saved, all the people that were rescued through the preaching of the gospel. If you've never been a part of what we're doing, I want to invite you to participate. Why don't you go right now and get online and donate something? You will be investing in people's lives around the world because we translate them into multiple languages and we go into regions around the earth, many places where they don't have a Christian witness other than our broadcast. So we would love you to be a part of that as well. God bless you.
Wil je de uitzendingen van Belis kunnen bekijken als je onderweg bent? In onze mediatheek hebben we meer dan 300 preken voor je klaarstaan. Antwoorden voor elke dag. Ga naar belis-kanli.nl/mediatheek. Heb je vragen over de uitzending? Of houd je iets bezig waarvoor we kunnen bidden? Schrijf ons dan of bel ons op. Ons team is er voor je.
We have a daily email devotional that I believe can be of great benefit to you. You know, when we take God's Word in every day, it helps us become established in the Lord. The Bible talks about the inward man being renewed day by day. Jesus had to take up our cross daily and to follow Him.
Lees de overdenking op je smartphone, 's ochtends bij de koffie, wanneer je onderweg bent of meteen op je computer.
Take time to sow the seeds of God's Word into your life every day with this free email devotional. You know, we always go through different things in life. We always have besetting circumstances. The storms of life come to everyone. But in the midst of those storms, there is hope. God always has an answer for us. He always has a pathway for us to walk. And I have a special gift that we want to get into your hands called There Is Always Hope. It's a bundle of messages that will be a blessing to you. In whatever circumstance you're going through, they will bring you hope. I hope that you get it.
God wil jou hoop geven. Heel veel hoop. Of aan een dierbare van je. De verzameling omvat 2 hoopvolle overdenkingen. Met een boekje over hoe God het leven van Belis veranderde. En bevrijdde van verslaving en chaos. Bestel vandaag een exemplaar. De contactgegevens staan nu in beeld. Hou moed. Er is altijd hoop.